morning, everyone. I'm Andrew Ujifusa, and this is Allison Klein, and we are the Politics K-12 bloggers. It is Betsy DeVos's confirmation hearing before the Senate Education Committee. That is taking place at 5 o'clock today. So we just want to talk about a few things that you should be watching out for as her committee hearing gets underway. First, I just want to say a little bit about Betsy DeVos. She is best known as a school choice advocate. She loves all things school choice. Until she was nominated by Trump, she led the American Federation for Children, which advocates for vouchers, education savings accounts, things like that. And she is also well known as a big-time donor to Republican Party candidates and causes. She also doesn't really have much direct experience at all with traditional public schools in K-12. So that's a little bit about her. I mean, what else would you say about DeVos, and maybe a little bit about the committee she's going to be going before today?
So there's a lot that we just don't know about Betsy DeVos beyond her obvious passion for school choice, including, as Andrew said, vouchers, education savings accounts, the whole gamut. So the committee will likely be trying to probe and get a sense of where else she is on when it comes to major issues in K-12, like accountability and school turnarounds and other policies in higher ed. The committee includes some names that are probably familiar to most of you folks. Some liberal superheroes, Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders. Obviously, Bernie Sanders already ran for president, got a lot of support from liberal grassroots. Senator Warren is considered a possible presidential candidate in 2020. So neither of those folks is going to be easy on DeVos. It's going to be like some YouTube-worthy moments. I think they'll both be trying to score, just like making it really clear to their liberal base that they really, really oppose this woman. And it comes at almost no risk to them. Wouldn't you say, Andrew? Like people
I think that for Bernie, for example, Betsy DeVos is almost a tailor-made example of what he thinks is wrong with Washington and how politics works. She's comes from a billionaire family. She's a big-time donor, and she doesn't have direct experience with the issues she'll be in charge of at the department. She's been a lobbyist and an advocate, and she has extensive experience in that way. But I think Bernie will be eager to go after her on a variety of fronts.
Yeah, and I think certainly Elizabeth Warren too. I mean, she's going to be, Facebook and Twitter and social media are a way a lot of these folks connect, obviously, with their audiences. Yeah. Sharp questions, right? Play really well on social media.
Oh,
so
yes.
yeah, they're going to be all about that.
Yeah.
There's also some moderate members of the committee that you should watch on the Republican side of the aisle. We've got Susan Collins, who's from Maine. She's elected, each year, each time that she's elected, she's done it with Democratic support. Maine is a fairly rural state, and vouchers and even charter schools are just kind of a tough policy to sell in rural areas because the schools are already really remote. It's hard to give students like a choice of schools. And another member to watch, she's kind of along those lines, is Senator Lisa Murkowski. She's from Alaska. Now, Betsy DeVos actually has donated, right, to some of the senators on the committee. Can you talk a little bit about that and tell us also what the committee leadership might be thinking?
Yeah, so first on the donations stuff, which I think has gotten a lot of attention in the media. So Betsy DeVos, as I mentioned earlier, is a big-time Republican donor, and she herself over the years has given directly to 5 senators, Republican senators that we know of. I'm going to maybe miss a name or two here, but folks like Richard Burr and Tim Scott and Bill Cassidy. So she's given to 5 of those folks, and her political action committee, Alticor, has given to additional members of the committee, I think a total of 10, including Senator Lamar Alexander, the chairman. So liberal groups have sort of been trying to make hay of that and saying, hey, she's effectively buying her nomination. So supporters of DeVos have countered with, hey, remember in 2013 when Penny Pritzker, big-time Democratic...
She's Secretary of Commerce, right?
Yes, she was confirmed back when there was a Democratic Senate. Yeah. And she was a big-time Democratic campaign bundler, fundraiser type. So they're saying if it's okay for Penny Pritzker to get a job in the cabinet, why not Betsy DeVos? So there's a little bit of a tit for tat going on with respect to that. As for Alexander, he has in public praised Betsy DeVos, said she would be an excellent choice for secretary. One thing I would point out, though, is that in maybe this Congress, if not the next one, Alexander is going to be very interested in reauthorizing the Higher Education Act. He has complained, for example, about how complicated FAFSA is to fill out, for example, the application for federal aid. He wants to address that issue. So there are higher education issues he wants to address, but Betsy DeVos doesn't have any significant direct experience with higher education issues. So it will be interesting to see, even though Alexander wants the nomination hearing to go well and smoothly, he's sort of the captain of the ship. He doesn't want it to go off the rails. But it'll be interesting to see, despite that, how much he presses her on higher education issues that he's interested in and how she responds. So that will be a good thing to watch for, I think, if he raises it at all in terms of higher ed and what he says. What else do you think we should be watching for in terms of issues that might come up and maybe sort of the outside of the committee, the groups that are raising them and trying to have those issues get traction?
So, yeah, that's a great question. So basically, every other Secretary of Education has kind of coasted through their confirmation hearing, and ahead of the confirmation hearing, there have been all these bipartisan letters of support. With this particular nominee, we've seen a much more kind of orchestrated campaign on both sides, both to an orchestrated campaign to defeat her and an orchestrated campaign to kind of bolster her. So today, for instance, there was this letter that came out, 38 groups, I believe, who don't agree with each other really on almost anything. We're talking about like Democrats for Education Reform and the teachers unions, the Center for American Progress.
They have big disagreements about things a lot of the time.
Yeah, accountability, they don't agree on that. They agree on spending. That's sort of maybe one of the main issues that they'll look at. But they see education policy really differently. Anyway, point being, none of those groups are huge fans of Betsy DeVos, and they've all encouraged the Senate basically to reject her nomination. Then on the other side, you have this kind of very also orchestrated, also very well organized and well funded effort to bolster Betsy DeVos. So we've seen letters from everybody from former Republican presidential nominee Mitt Romney to former First Lady Barbara Bush to today, I believe, former D.C. Mayor Anthony Williams, who's a Democrat, talking about DeVos and how great the policies that she's pushed are. Actually today, Senator Joseph Lieberman, who was Al Gore's running mate back in 2000, Democrat, will be supposedly, according to the Washington Examiner, introducing DeVos.
And he's served with DeVos on the board of American Federation for Children, right? So they have a relationship and have worked together on school choice, right? So I think maybe they're trying to show, look, maybe she's a big-time GOP donor, but she has worked across the aisle and she has friends on the Democratic side. Do you think that's something they're trying to play up?
Yeah, they're definitely trying to show that she's been called kind of outside the norm,
right,
and they've really tried to tie her to Donald Trump and some of the really incendiary rhetoric he used on the campaign trail. And these are sort of mainstream Republicans and some Democrats who are speaking out to paint her as sort of more mainstream, more somebody who parents would be excited to have as their Secretary of Education. Speaking of Trump, we've seen a bunch of these nominees, right, try to distance themselves from Trump on national security policy. It's easy to imagine, right? Betsy DeVos trying to distance herself from some of Trump's comments about, immigrant kids, right? And maybe even some of the things that he said about vaccines and how they may or may not cause autism. What do you think about that?
That's true.
Yeah.
And we don't know a ton about her detailed views on, I think, a lot of the civil rights issues and school climate issues that have become, I think, more prominent in the last few years. So it'll be interesting to see what she says about that. At the same time, Donald Trump, as many of us know, did not talk a lot about education on the campaign trail. The one thing he did talk about was a big $20 billion school choice program, basically a voucher system for low-income students. So that's something that I think, in theory, Betsy DeVos might like. I think she's definitely interested in expanding choice where she can, but that runs up against maybe her conservative instincts and maybe some of the desires of some Republican members of the committee not to create sort of a federal Department of School Choice.
Yeah.
I think that would be greeted with some skepticism, including maybe from the chairman, Senator Alexander. One other thing to note, you mentioned accountability, and I think that's where a lot of people are wondering where she stands at the federal level. There was something that I think did not get a lot of attention, but about 10 days ago or so, there was a Montana Senator, Steve Daines, who has pushed for a change to federal law that would allow states to basically opt out of federal accountability systems, measures, and to block grant federal funding.
Yeah, I remember seeing that when I was covering ESSA.
Yeah, right. So Alexander did not like that proposal from Senator Daines, but Daines said about 10 days ago that when he met with DeVos, she indicated support for it. So we don't know a lot about how she feels about federal accountability, but if Senator Daines is right, then that might get some attention at the hearing too, including maybe from Alexander, who again did not like that proposal to let states opt out of accountability measures from Washington. So it'll be interesting to see if she says anything about that, or if she's asked about that from Alexander, or maybe Patty Murray, the top Democrat on the committee. We don't know, but she is, according to Senator Daines at least, supportive of that greatly increased flexibility for states.
And one other thing we should mention is that you'll probably be hearing the word ethics, and the Office of Government Ethics will be a major player potentially in this hearing, because as of yesterday and actually even early this morning, Betsy DeVos's paperwork hadn't yet gotten a sign-off from the Office of Government Ethics. Her people say she turned it in time months ago, but because she's so wealthy, there's just a lot for those folks to comb through when it comes to potential conflicts of interest. So it's easy. The hearing was already postponed once. Lawmakers cited the Senate schedule in that postponement, but it's really easy to imagine, and sources were kind of telling us behind the scenes that that the ethics paperwork and the fact that it wasn't ready for prime time yet may have played a role in that delay. And so, since we still haven't seen the paperwork, or haven't seen the sign off, she has turned in her paperwork, but there's no
clearance from
no clearance from a government ethics office. I think that lack of a clearance will almost certainly be something Democrats will bring up quite a bit at this hearing. Right,
and so I think the key point is that Alexander's office has indicated that that paperwork will be cleared before they hold a committee vote on her nomination. They want that out of the way. They don't want that to be an outstanding issue. Now, that committee vote on DeVos is scheduled for the 24th, so we have a week. So that may be enough time, but until we see that sign-off from the Office of Government Ethics on her paperwork, it's going to be an outstanding question as to what are they looking at, when are they going to clear it. So I don't know if Republicans on the committee, Alexander in particular, are sweating yet about are they going to be able to get that done and have her paperwork cleared before the 24th and the vote. But it's certainly an outstanding issue as we sit here today.
Yeah.
So have we missed anything?
I don't think so. I'll just add one more thing. The hearing is happening at 5 o'clock today.
Yes.
And that is really late, right? That's really unusual. We're used to hearings happening at like 10, maybe 2 in the afternoon. And some folks have said that the late timing could be because they just don't really want a ton of attention and a ton of time. The Republican leaders on the committee, don't want a ton of attention on this nomination, or a ton of time for Democrats to ask questions that could end up damaging Betsy DeVos.
I think Alexander has actually said he wants a relatively snappy hearing. He doesn't want multiple rounds of questions that could drag out the hearing even more. So we'll see if he's able to stick to that, how much Democrats put up a fight to prolong the hearing. But it's already going to be starting relatively late in the day. So we'll
people
see.
Want to get home.
Yeah, we'll see what time it is when folks are finally able to get on the metro or get home.
Yeah.
So I think that's going to do it from us. As Allison just said, the hearing's at 5 o'clock this evening. You can watch on our Facebook page, and we will be tweeting the hearing. You can follow along to our tweets at PoliticsK12. So see you guys at 5 o'clock.
Thank you.